Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu wa nasalli ala Rasul al-Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here is another example of how misleading the translation of Muhammad Asad and other similar translations is. So I'm going to read from Surah Al-Hijr, which is chapter 15 of the Quran, and this is verse 2. This is how Muhammad Asad translates this verse. And it will come to pass that those who are now bent upon denying the truth will wish that they had surrendered themselves to God. And within brackets, he says, in their lifetime. Now, here is the translation of that verse, which is the accurate translation according to the Quran. It says, perhaps those who disbelieve will wish they had been Muslims. Notice the Quran uses the word Muslimin, and that is translated as Muslims, which is a proper translation. But Muhammad Asad does not use the word Muslim in his translation. And anybody who is translating the Quran and is not using the word Muslim, where the Quran is saying Muslim, is making a mistake, because the word Muslim means a person who is a member or who belongs to the religion of Islam. The reason why these translations are misleading is because people who are not Muslims or consider themselves out of Islam, or who are not, or who belong to other religions, may think they surrender themselves to God. But in reality, this is not what the Quran is talking about. The Quran is talking about a particular group of people who consider themselves the followers of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Those are the ones who are considered Muslims. People who do not consider Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the last prophet are not considered Muslims. They may consider themselves surrendering themselves to God, but that's not the Quran's message. So it should be very clear to people who are reading these translations, especially Muhammad Asad's translation, which consistently throughout uses language like surrender themselves to God, submit to God. A lot of people who do not consider themselves to be Muslims, belong to other religions, may consider themselves to be surrendering to God, which is a complete misunderstanding of the message of the Quran. The Quran talks about the religion of the Quran, the message of the Quran. So after the coming of the Quran, the only people who are considered Muslims or who considered followers of Islam are the ones who consider this to be the last message. It is true that messengers before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were the true prophets of God, and their religion or their book was the true book of God. But now those books are lost. We do not have those books intact in the way they were revealed to the Prophet of that time. The Quran is the only revelation which has been preserved through memorization. The previous revelations are lost because they were not preserved through memorization. And the message of that prophet and the teachings and his ways are no longer available to the people. So for all times to come, now the message of Islam is contained in the Quran, and this has to be mentioned by the translator in order to be accurate. The translators can translate it the way they understand it, but to be accurate, when the Quran uses the word Muslimin or Muslimun, or uses Islam, it is not a reference to anybody who may consider themselves to be surrendering. So the word surrender is not enough to give the message of the Quran. So whenever the Quran uses these terms, it uses Islam and Muslim, that has to be mentioned to be accurate. So once again, those people who are reading translations that do not contain this, do not say that specifically, should be very careful. They may think they are understanding the Quran, they may think they are understanding the message, but that could be very misleading.